Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Denzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Denzel, and it's Monday. You made it through the weekend. Kind of a slow weekend for me. Had some rain here. Couldn't get out to throw the discs any. Just kind of a very laid-back weekend in which I did not do a lot. I was hoping that my man Phil Mickelson would be able to pull out the British Open, win his sixth major. That's not how it went. Henrik Stenson just too tough. Just lights out. He shot a 63 with two bogeys. Phil Mickelson shot a 63 on Thursday, but he didn't have any bogeys. So it was, I guess that would be 8 birdies on a course that was a par 71. So Stenson had 10 birdies on Sunday. Putting the ball right in the fairway. Could have easily shot that 61 with no bogeys. Could have easily done it. Phil, maybe a couple strokes. He just wasn't going to beat Stenson. And Stenson was probably due, you could say. He's been up there. He's won the Players' Championship. He's performed well in a lot of different majors. He was just due, and as a Phil Mickelson fan, to use a horrible cliche, just got to tip your cap to Henrik Stenson. I'm sure that Phil felt bad losing. He probably feels bad today, but if he goes back and watches a video of that round, he's just going to say, Phil to win, Phil would have had to have shot, remember, he was a shot going in, he would have had to have shot, he got beat by 3. He would have to tie, would have had to shoot a 62. To win, he would have to shot a 61. A 62 has never been shot in any major at any time. Just not meant to be. I think that Phil, if he looks back at this tournament, he's going to say probably lost it on Saturday. Shooting that 70 was just not good enough considering everything. But as has been pointed out, his final score of 17 under would have been enough, and the British Open has been held 144 times. That score of 1700 would have been enough to win all but 4 of them. So what are you going to do? Just the way where things work out sometimes. But it was interesting to watch. My Pirates finally won a game yesterday, too, with a rookie pitcher on the mound. I don't know. They play a lot of bad teams coming up, so I'm hoping they can pad their record a little bit and get into the wild card race a little bit more than they are right now. We'll just have to see what happens there. A few programming notes regarding this show and some of the other things that I do. You're going to probably be noticing some changes. Not today or this week or even next week, but I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks starting on July 28th till August 11th, in which I'm not going to be doing any shows. And I think that when I come back from that, you're going to be noticing some things. I don't want to give too much away, but if you follow me on Twitter, maybe you've already seen a couple of the changes. Going to be switching up the show, changing the name of it, some different things. In addition, you should know, being that for the last almost 2 months, I've been talking about this other show that I was doing called America's Missing Podcast, which went from nothing to something fairly huge in that time span. I'm not going to be doing that show anymore. I know. Show business. I know. Actually, I'm going to be going off and doing my own show. That'll be also something different that you'll notice once I come back from this break that I'm going to be taking for 2 weeks, although I'm not sure how much of a break it's going to be. That's going to be something else that why the other show's ending, really don't want to get into it. Once again, just showbiz, just timing, right place, right time, wrong place, wrong time. Good while it lasted. And that's really all I really want to say about it. But I'm going to be branching off. Haven't figured out the name of that show yet that I'm just going to be doing on my own. But there's certainly enough room out there I discovered in the last 2 months to... there's a lot of room out there for a lot of good true crime, unsolved mysteries, disappearance shows out there. The people who follow that are very energetic. So there's a lot of room out there, I think, for everybody right now. Now, it may change 6 months from now. Who knows? But that America's Missing podcast, I will not be a part of it, although I think that it's going to continue. So I'll just leave it at that. So let's get to the show. Where do I start? Since I left the microphone on Friday, a lot has gone on. Let's just start here in the United States with the shooting in Baton Rouge. Being that I'm from Pennsylvania, I'm a northerner, I call it Baton Rouge in contrast to Baton Rouge, or however they actually do say it in Louisiana. 3 cops dead, 3 cops wounded. 1, it sounds, pretty severely in critical condition. The other 2, I think, are going to live for sure. This other guy, I'm not so sure. This is very much like what happened in Dallas. These cops were targeted. It was not something where they were on a call and the suspect got violent. And these cops were targeted. The man who did this knew that these police officers, that this convenience store and this car wash was a place where cops regularly stopped to get something to eat, to vacuum out their cars, to wash their cars. And he was lying in wait for them on Friday. And or was it Saturday now? These days just run together. Was waiting for them and engaged them. In fact, I think one of the officers was killed, was vacuuming his car. I'm not even sure he even saw it coming. You get that vacuum. We know how loud one of those audio vacs can be. Probably didn't even hear the gunshots. So where do we go? And you should know, I'm not going to say the guy's name. Are you surprised that it's another former service member, former member of the United States military that did this? Just like the guy who shot all those police officers in Dallas. Is that a coincidence? Is there something going on there? As you know, back in the Dallas circumstances, I threw out there that, is there something going on? Is it more than just hatred of police? Is it just Black Lives Matter? It's not just Black Lives Matter. It's a variety of things. But can we throw in there something that has gone on with some of these men? And let's hope we don't have any women involved. We have enough dead cops as it is. Is this some sort of psychosis? Is this some sort of mental issue on top of everything else, where a military member comes back from there and certain messages on the internet or on TV, on the radio, wherever, hits that man in the wrong place in his brain, a mind that might already have been damaged by seeing what went on in Iraq or Afghanistan, and maybe getting comfortable with violence. I think that we have to start opening our mind to that. Because as odds go, most people in the United States have not served in the military. Obviously, we have a large military, and a lot of people go into that voluntarily, but we still have many, many, many more Americans who don't. And so to have 2 huge police shootings within a week to 10 days of each other, and both are committed by veterans, I'm not sure that's a coincidence, frankly. Now, in this case, this guy had a lot of messages on YouTube, elsewhere, on social media, styled himself as some sort of life coach, advisor, or something like that, going by a pseudonym Cosmo, Setepenra, which I don't think, I've never heard of that last name before. Once again, it's made up. Setepenra. I'm usually good at doing words and names like that, but that one is a weird combination of vowels and consonants to come up with that. But that was his fake name online. But he was on there talking about Black Lives Matter and hating cops. But he also was saying that it could help people out, helping them with their lives, which I think is an interesting combination, a distressing combination. I was reading an article, and this is, get this from Fox now. I mean, obviously the news is everywhere. That he was a member of the Nation of Islam, and the article I was reading said the militant Nation of Islam. Well, I tell you, I guess I feel that way. I guess that Nation of Islam with Louis Farrakhan and the rest of those kooks are dangerous. But to my knowledge, all of these terrorist attacks that have happened in the United States since September 11th, I mean, I'm not here to defend the Nation of Islam, but I don't think any of those men and then the woman involved in San Bernardino, I don't think any of them were involved in the Nation of Islam. Now, the Nation of Islam has come out and condemned some of them and supported some of them. But I don't know if we've actually had a firm member of Nation of Islam committing a terrorist act in the United States in the name of militant Islam. Whereas I don't know if you're going to be able to connect. I mean, the Dallas shooting, I don't even think that guy was a Muslim. I don't think. I don't know if it matters what his religion is, but I don't believe it was international terrorism as we've come to define it. It wasn't San Bernardino. It wasn't what happened in Orlando. What happened in Dallas was something else. That's the feeling that I get with this Baton Rouge shooting of these cops. 3 dead once again, 3 wounded. Or we could talk about the Nice attack. That was something else that we'll do a follow-up before the show's over. So this is just good old-fashioned violence. And I think it just happens to be that this guy was a member of the Nation of Islam. I think that these actions go much deeper than what his religion is. It goes to what his race is. It goes to all of the lies, as I talked about last week. All of these shootings are based on lies. In addition, the protests that were happening when the Dallas shooting happened are all based on lies as well. A total distortion of the truth. That's not to say that police haven't made mistakes. And we're going to talk about police before we're done with this show. But it's still all based on lies and a wrong perception of what's going on out there. Now, see, if I could be, I guess that I could be convinced. I could convince myself if I think about it long enough. When I think about what happened in Dallas and then what happened in Baton Rouge, and it's not a coincidence that the Baton Rouge is the place also where Elton Sterling was killed by 2 cops. I think that's why this guy picked that area. And you should know that one of the cops murdered was a black guy who just days before had been expressing that how difficult it is for him to be a police officer, and being black and being a police officer and being hated and defending his fellow police officers, knowing how tough their jobs are. So it wasn't even just after white cops. I guess that this guy wanted to go after any cops at all. And it may be that people who feel like this don't see black cops as black cops. They just see them as policemen, and maybe they see them as black men or women who sold out. But getting back to this military angle, and the facts are out there regarding men and women who have come back from Iraq and Afghanistan. They suffer quite a bit. They live in their own personal hells. You can Google the facts about how many veterans over the last 10, 15 years come back to the United States and commit suicide. It's much higher than the general population. And this is why I keep coming back to how we've conducted these wars over the last 15 years, that if you're not going to conduct them quick, then you shouldn't do them. If you're not going to go all out and try to end it as fast as possible, the human mind cannot take that length of stress and length of pressure. And it doesn't seem that switching these people in and out over time, letting them there for so many months, then giving them a vacation and putting back in, that doesn't do it either. I think that the frustration of what they're doing creeps in no matter how much vacation they have or how much time they are on the front lines. Now, PTSD has been known by all sorts of different names for centuries. Battle fatigue, shell-shocked. But it seems in this current crop of military veterans, we have an inordinate amount of people who do not adapt well back to civilian life. And I think it's partially because of how we conduct these wars. I think of, did you see the first Jack Reacher movie, Tom Cruise? I guess the second one is going to be coming out in a few months. We'll see if it's any good. I've never read any of the books, but my brother and his wife are a huge fan of the books, and they thought that Tom Cruise was just fine in that role, though I guess Jack Reacher's supposed to be 6'5", and Tom Cruise is 5'6", but they thought that Tom Cruise captured the essence of the character fairly well. But there is a part in that Jack Reacher movie, and he's talking about the guy who is the patsy in the movie. I don't want to give too much away, but that patsy who is made to look like he shot all these innocent people in Pittsburgh, that's where the movie takes place, is actually done by somebody else. But going further back, the backstory is that he was in Iraq, and then one of his last days in Iraq, he shot these guys coming out of this building, and there was some reasons that guy didn't end up going to Leavenworth. But Tom Cruise, his character Jack Reacher, in explaining why that happened, was that saying here was a guy who was trained to kill on and never ever got to pull the trigger, and that kind of built up in him to the point where he couldn't handle it anymore. And then he went and shot those men coming out of that building. And the only thing that saved that guy from going to Leavenworth was he just happened to shoot 3 or 4 men from some Americans who were part of some security team that had just gone in and raped a bunch of Iraqi women, or it was something like that. I haven't seen the movie recently, and that's why they just kind of poo-pooed it and let him go on his way. And it was Jack Reacher who, while he was in the military and the military police, figured that all out. So I wonder if that's the way it is with these. It's the Black Lives Matter. It's I'm just throwing ideas out there because I don't believe that them being vets is a coincidence. that they would choose to use their military experience for these ends. It's a combination of things. Now, in the case of the Dallas shooter, it seems like he had gotten in some trouble while he was over in, I think it was Afghanistan, and he got honorably discharged. Go figure that out. But in this current case that happened a couple days ago, so far we haven't heard any news like that. In fact, the guy was a sergeant. And with it is supposed to come a certain amount of discipline. And I think that to rise to sergeant in the Marines, that you'd have to show a certain amount of discipline and respect for your fellow man and taking orders and following the law. And this guy just threw it all out the window to kill some innocent cops. It just makes you think. I don't think that you can just slough this off and saying, it's just a coincidence. I think there's more to it than that. Especially when I know all these other things that military veterans are going through. I can read. Is this what they're doing, just another form of what some of these other military members are doing, committing suicide? Their minds being attracted to violence, whether against themselves or others. Is it a factor of how we are committing, perpetrating these wars, these battles against terrorists? Because you'll notice, once again, in these two shootings, it wasn't civilians. I'm not saying civilians aren't shooting cops out there. We know they are. But in these big ones, these two noteworthy recent ones, here we have a couple military veterans. And this is not a cut against our military in the United States. It's not. And about serving your country, about putting your life on the line so us civilians can maintain our rights and we aren't overrun by heathens and barbarians and militant Muslims and the rest of them. It's about what goes on there while we're supposed to be fighting wars and we kind of aren't. And the way that we conduct these missions is not 100%. It's just 50%. It's just 40%. And I think that wears on people, both men and women in the military, and a lot of civilians, but it's the military members who have to deal with it. And I wonder if they come back, they're not totally in the right state of mind, and then something like a Black Lives Matter lie can creep its way into the minds of some of these people, and they start thinking about doing things that they wouldn't have ever thought about doing 10 years ago. Because you read the stories, well, they seem like good people. It's even in the case of the shooter in Dallas. Seemed like a good guy. Went over there, got in some trouble. This guy seemed like a good guy. I don't know what happened. And it's just tough to decipher. Because I think that looking at the news, at some point, all of these episodes start running into each other. It's like as soon as one is out of the news, another thing happens. As soon as San Bernardino is out of the news and people are trying to move on, you have Orlando. Once Orlando happens, then Dallas, then Baton Rouge, and everything in between. And they're all horrible, but they all are motivated, I think, for different reasons. Despite in this most recent case that this guy being a follower of the Nation of Islam. I don't think he was on there saying, on these videos saying Allahu Akbar. He was saying that Black Lives Matter is right and cops deserve to be killed. It's a little bit different message. So, it's going to be something that needs to be examined. It needs to be examined. Are military veterans more prone to doing something like this? Are they not because of the person that they are, but because of their experience and something that has damaged them mentally? We'll just have to see. Because the reason I bring this up, and I hope that you can see the nuance in the argument I'm trying to make, is you would think that people who are in the military would be less likely to do this stuff. No matter if they are black, no matter if they are male, no matter if they grew up in poverty or wherever else. You'd think, given that their experience of discipline and getting up at 5 in the morning and being responsible for their fellow, their unit or whatever they call it, would teach them to respect life more, no matter what the race or gender of the person is. In fact, that's one of the things they try to do in the military. That's why they shave your heads, so everybody kind of looks the same. You can't change a person's skin color, but everybody kind of looks the same. You're supposed to look at each one of your fellow soldiers as being the same. So you'd think that those people would be less likely to go about the Dallas shooting, to go about the Baton Rouge shooting. Instead, that's exactly the opposite. And that's exactly why I think that, it should be examined. And it's not going to end. Once again, this is no different than after the San Bernardino shooting that I said, well, don't get too comfortable, because right now I'm sure there's somebody else planning another terrorist attack in the United States. And I was right. It ended up being in Orlando. Ended up being at a gay nightclub in Orlando. Now, if anybody could have predicted that, I'm not so sure. But I knew somebody was out there, or a group was out there scheming. And likewise, when the issue is police shootings, right now, as I'm talking on this Monday, July 18th, 2016, there's probably more than one person thinking about another police shooting. It's just the way it is. Based on lies. And dare I say it, I hope that it's not another military veteran who does this. I hope, of course, it never happens at all, but I know it's going to. Just for once, how do I put this? You'd like to see, you don't want any shootings, but you'd like to see one of these Black Lives Matter people get caught red-handed before a shooting happens. Get one of these vocal people who lead this group on the way to doing something and getting stopped and getting caught. That would be a best-case scenario for all of us. But I don't think that's going to happen, because I said that the people who lead this movement don't try to separate themselves from the violence, because you know why? They don't want to get shot. They don't want to go to jail. They're getting too much power for it, and they're going to allow other people to do their dirty work, even if it means military vets who might be mentally damaged from their experience in the military, because we just haven't been conducting wars the way we should the last 15 years. Black Lives Matter is happily going to let other people do their dirty work. So, but it's going to happen again. I don't know where. It's one of the reasons when I talk about carrying guns, is you as a civilian, you don't know when you're going to get caught in the crossfire of something like this, whether it's in Dallas or Baton Rouge, and you're technically, I guess, not going to be the target, but you may get caught in the crossfire anyway. But I got to go to the break. You've been listening to the Densel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.
The voice of American conservatism. WRS Digital, Red State Talk Radio.
And we are back at the Densel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I want to move on to something else, although I may get back to the police question, the topic of policing in the United States before I go. But I have to talk about Turkey, what happened there this past weekend. And I made a joke on Facebook, if you saw it this weekend. I said, I've revolted against Turkey many times. I've eaten ham instead. That's the best I could do. Sorry. You know how I love plays on words. It seems that at least a small part of the Turkish military tried to conduct a coup this weekend, throwing out President Erdogan, Erdogan, who has been its leader for a while and over the years has tried to consolidate power in the presidency. He has tried to bring Islamic law a little bit more into Turkey. You should know that Turkey is a Muslim country as you would understand it, but you also understand that it's not necessarily Iran or Saudi Arabia, but it certainly has seemed over the years that Erdogan wants to go in that direction. He's certainly taking that country in a direction more toward them than toward what we would call most of the countries in Europe are, or the United States, or we could just put it this way, the other countries in NATO, because Turkey is a part of NATO. And the belief is that some of the military, and this coups in Turkey, this isn't a new thing. They've had a few of these over the years. But so it's not a total surprise that something like this would happen in Turkey. But the way it went about it, and it being unsuccessful, might be the new part. And in fact, as somebody said, I would forget where I was reading it, said that this coup was conducted as if it were still the 1970s and not the 2000s, because it could be argued, I guess, that what saved Erdogan was social media. That he was able to get on FaceTime, if you can imagine this, FaceTime, and get to all of his supporters in Turkey, all the voters out there in Turkey, all the civilians in Turkey, to tell them what's going on. And they were the ones who went into the streets and kind of ended up making it a little bit more difficult for these military members to do what they were trying to do, slowed them down to the point where pro-government forces, pro-Erdogan forces could get the upper hand. And now, 2 days later, over 7,000 people have been arrested in Turkey, from civilians to military members to judges to politicians, from every walk of life. Anybody who is suspected of taking part in this coup or knowing about it beforehand or just because have been rounded up. And you can see many pictures on the internet of these men, and they've been stripped down and they're kneeling on the ground, hands tied behind their back. Needless to say, it's going to be, I think the rest of their life is going to be very difficult, and I don't know how long their lives are going to be. Now, what was interesting to me, and I tried to catch up on a little bit of Turkey history, and, when I think of Turkey, I automatically think of, I know this is kind of funny, but I think of the movie From Russia with Love, where James Bond goes to Turkey, to Istanbul, and to get the Lecter. Remember, if you're not going to go into the plot of that, but he has to steal this code-breaking machine with this beautiful young Russian from the embassy there and then whisk it off to take this code-breaking machine back to the West. And the way you see Turkey portrayed in that film is, I think, the way that we would like Turkey to stay. In that they're Muslim, but they're very pro-Western, pro-rights, pro-elections, pro-freedom, freedom of speech, and the rest of it. I'm not saying that Turkey was ever like the United States, but, Ataturk tried to saw that the danger of becoming too much of a Muslim country and being too strict with Muslim tradition would hold his country back, and he's the one that kind of put Turkey on this course, and now it's Erdogan and others who are trying to take it back the other way. Not because necessarily they are the greatest Muslims ever, but because they love the power. And needless to say, you probably couldn't do a film like From Russia with Love today and portray Turkey the way it is today. I think you'd run into a lot of problems with the plot. But what was, these are the times that I start disagreeing with my fellow conservatives on this. And this goes not just for, I know people who do shows on Red State Talk Radio, but in many of the websites that I go to accumulate information for this show because research is allowed. That I guess that they wanted Barack Obama and John Kerry to come out and speak out in favor of the coup starters, of these people who started this revolution. Because it is seen that Turkey is not as friendly to the West as it used to be. It's not as friendly to NATO as it used to be. It's a little too friendly with Syria and it being a gateway for Syrians to get into Europe. And the tradition, reading up the way I did the past week, and just very quickly on Turkey, is that the military has been seen as the organization within Turkey that tries to keep this all in line and tries to keep the traditions of what Ataturk originally wanted when he set up modern Turkey. And because of that, a lot of conservatives in the United States were hoping that the coup would be successful. Now, I have nothing wrong with that. In any coup, you don't know what you're going to get. Even if it is the military, even if they have a tradition of wanting to protect people's rights, a little bit different attitude than the president, the leader of Turkey may have, once again, you just don't know what you're going to get. You don't know. But wanting a coup to succeed because you understand the tradition of the military in Turkey is a lot different than the president of the United States coming out and saying, yeah, he hopes that the coup succeeds, and giving support to the military members. To me, that's a little far, especially when you don't know which way the coup is going to go. And in that, I think too many conservatives are trying to treat this like Iran. When the Arab Spring happened and all those younger people in Iran got into the streets and were protesting the leadership, and the leadership in Iran really cracked down and Barack Obama kept his mouth shut. That's different. That's different. Even though I know we have the Iran deal and everything, Iran is still, I think, to many people in the United States, view it as an enemy. I'm not so sure how many people view Turkey as an enemy in the United States, at least not yet, no matter who its leader is. First of all. Second of all, it was very clear what was going on with the demonstrations in Iran. That had they succeeded, I think it's safe to say that Iran would be a better place. I think you could say that. Maybe not. might go the way of Libya, the way Libya's gone. Maybe it would have gone the way that Egypt has gone, where it's very, very tenuous. The fact is, Egypt was better when Hosni Mubarak was still the leader of it. That's a fact. Now, it's changed. It's worse. I guess it could be a lot worse, but it's gotten worse. But I could at least see with Iran going back to that Arab springtime. How long ago was that? 4 or 5 years now? 3 years? I don't know. That you could look at what those people wanted in Iran and say, well, you know what? Might be better, but you don't know. But you could say, well, you know, Iran, it's already a sponsor of terror. It's already doing this, already doing that. They want to get a nuclear bomb. How much worse could a new leadership be? And so, yes, Barack Obama should have come out and said that and supported those people. And I look back at it now, and I think a lot of those people were hoping for that. They didn't get it. Whereas with this being Turkey, I mean, technically Turkey is an ally of the United States, being that we are in NATO together, despite how much Turkey has changed over the years for the worse. And for a president, no matter what party he's from and what his political inclinations may be, to come out and say that he wants the coup to succeed, to me, that's just a little too far, no matter if the coup is successful or not. First of all, just say that Barack, what would have happened? Do you really, let's put it this way, do you really believe that the coup would have succeeded had John Kerry and Barack Obama come out and say, yeah, we hope it succeeds? What did you want to happen? The military, the American military bases in Turkey, did you want them to go along with did you want American planes bombing Parliament in Turkey? Is that how far you want it to go to make sure that the coup succeeds? Did you want American planes to find out where Erdogan was and bomb him and bomb his people and kill him to help the coup along? I just don't know. What is the line? Is there a line to be drawn in here anywhere? But hey, like it or not, Erdogan, and as you could see by at least all the video that I saw, it seems that a majority of Turks in that country are perfectly fine with their leadership. Not all of them. I wouldn't say 75% of them. I don't even know if it's 60%. But it seems to me that the people in that country were more against the coup starters, the revolutionists. They were more against them than against Erdogan himself. And once again, do you want to, as the United States, throw your support against a coup that seemed to end within 6 or 7, 8 hours? Where would that put the United States now with Turkey? We just threw our weight behind a coup in which 7,000 people got arrested. 290 got killed. And it was... Don't you see how complex that situation be? Instead, John Kerry and Barack Obama came out and said probably the most political thing ever, that they thought that the democratically elected Erdogan should remain. And before you get all crazy and saying, well, we don't know, the elections could have been fixed and this. Well, if that's the case, then the coup people should have been able to get more people to go along with them to overthrow Erdogan. If a large majority of the people don't want him in power, it should have been a lot easier for this coup to happen. And it should have succeeded. It didn't. Maybe there just aren't enough people in Turkey who hate Erdogan enough. Could it be? And in fact, the stories that you read from Fox News to CNN to NBC and everything else, a lot of these privates, just entry-level people in the military, they just thought it was an exercise. So the only reason they were going along with the coup was because they were told it was something else. And had they known, they probably wouldn't have done it. Does the United States really, really, really need to get involved in something like that? You shouldn't have to lie to people if they want to be involved. If there's just this wide support that Erdogan is a dictator, then it should be no problem getting many, many, many people to be involved. It could be that a bunch of Turks, enough of the majority, like it. No different than going back to the Hitler days. You know why nobody killed Hitler earlier than they tried to in 1944? Why? Because a lot of people liked him. And they didn't have to be threatened to do so. They loved him. He was winning a war here, winning a battle here, going after the Jews there. A lot of good Germans said, Hitler, he's the man. Same way that goes on with Erdogan. And I'm not saying Erdogan is Hitler, but it just shows you that just because the leader is bad doesn't mean the people who live in the country think he's bad. And this just shows you also, for any people out there who want to think about starting a coup, you better make sure that you can succeed, or else. What's the old saying? If you're going to go after the king, you better get him. And as I read, I'm no coup expert, and I'm no Turkish expert, but what I read concerning this is that they went about this and totally forgot that social media exists. They took down a lot of the different social media sites, but not enough of them. They did it while Erdogan was out of town. Instead, they should have done it while he was in town and get a hold of him. Instead, he was allowed to escape and kind of flew around circles in Europe, trying to land in Germany and elsewhere until it was finally, I wonder where his plane was gassing up. There's a thought. But finally, when he was allowed to come back to Turkey, and he came back as a savior, you see all those people as he was driving up? Those aren't faked videos. Those are real people around his car, happy that he's back. I mean, he's not even in a bullet. He's not even in the tank like Barack Obama has. He was just in a regular car. If they really hated him, all one of them might have had to have done is get out a gun and shoot him. The way they were around his car. They love him. And you want the United States to take part in a coup like this. Once again, I know that he's not the greatest leader for Turkey. I get it. But if the United States wants to get in the business of overthrowing different... Have we not done enough of that in the last 7-8 years? Did we not learn our lesson with Gaddafi? Did we not learn our lesson with Hosni Mubarak? And once again, as you know, I always differentiate them from Saddam Hussein, who is a different kind of character. I realize that Erdogan is seen as being a little too light on ISIS, and he'd rather fight the Kurds than fight, true terrorism. Well, if that's the way it is, then we ourselves should do something about Erdogan, not rely on a bunch of coup revolutionists who can't get their act straight. So I had no problem with what Barack Obama came out and said regarding this. He has to say that. And in this way, I know that I don't sound like a conservative doing this. I just don't know what the alternative is. I try to think that Ronald Reagan would not have backed the coup people. Once again, Turkey is not Romania. This is not Ceausescu. It's not. It's not one of these countries behind the Iron Curtain that finally the people rose up against their dictator. It's not that. It's something else. And I remind you, Turkey is supposed to be an ally of ours, and it's part of NATO. So I just have a totally different view on this. And it's going to get worse in Turkey. Because of this, Turkey's going to get worse. And those guys' lives who took part in this, I don't know. I guess right now the death penalty is illegal in Turkey. I don't see that lasting for very long. Or they'll just disappear them. They'll just say, oh, they're in some jail somewhere, but they'll really kill them. But they'll just say, oh, they're in some jail somewhere. And, you know, if any of you have seen the movie Midnight Express, about that guy who got caught with drugs in Turkey and was trying to remember that movie, you know what a Turkish prison's like. Once again, bringing fiction into... That was actually a true story, though, based on a true story. So it's interesting to watch. I'm sure if you were on the streets of Istanbul or Ankara this past weekend, a lot of drama going on there. And of course, we also know that recently there was the bombing at the airport there. But what I see is a majority of Turkish people who perfectly like the way this is going. This is, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of these photos that I've seen in Egypt from like the 1960s through the 1990s. That if you looked at a picture of kids in some university in Egypt, you could tell they're Middle Eastern, but everybody's dressed very Westernish and going along with the times, as though you get into the 70s, into the 80s, into the 90s. It's like they're going the wrong direction. The women are suddenly covering themselves up. You could tell that there's a change somewhere. And that's what's going on in Turkey right now. I don't like it, but if you want to stop it and keep Turkey from becoming something closer to Iran, then we as the United States, we're going to have to take care of it on our own. NATO is going to have to take care of it on our own. And we're going to have to do it despite the fact that I believe that a lot of Turkish citizens, or Turks, probably will be against it. And if I had to guess, it's probably the older people who dislike Erdogan, and it's the younger people who do like him. And as we're finding out in the United States and elsewhere, it seems like younger Muslims are more radical than older Muslims, which would then go back to what I told you about these pictures that I saw from Egypt. The older people were more westernized, the younger people more Muslimized. So, and this, I think, all goes back to ISIS. It goes back to the United States not being able to take care of its business. I think that we had wiped out Al-Qaeda and all of this terrorists in 4 or 5 years, and ISIS never existed and all that. Then you don't have these problems in Turkey. Because we didn't do it that way. You get Turkey going more radical. And you also have, as I started this show, a bunch of military members coming back to the United States with PTSD and other symptoms that may cause them to be violent, not just to themselves, but to others. But I got to go. You can go to edwarddenzel.com where you can find all of my old Red State Talk Radio shows. You can also find them now only at Podomatic and on iTunes. That's one of the small changes. You can email me, edwarddenzel@reagan.com. Twitter, Denzel. Actually, we're changing that too. The new Twitter feed is USA Podcast. So you can look for that, USA Podcast. Find me on Facebook, LinkedIn. You can find my books on Amazon.com, Edward Denzel. Just do a search for that. That's all I got for you in the marketing section. It's been a pleasure talking to you tonight. You've been listening to the Dental Domain on Red State Talk Radio.